Welcome back to episode 10 of From the Couch Sports. My name is Connor and I am your host today. I got a lot I want to get into. We've got a crazy couple days of NFL news, some upcoming UFC card this weekend. It's going to be a ton of fun to watch. And then we got the March Madness kicking off. So I got a lot I want to get into. As always, if you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. But to kick things off, we have a blockbuster trade to talk about, potentially even a bigger trade than the Russell Wilson trade from last week. We've got Deshaun Watson deciding to go to Cleveland. That's crazy, just crazy to say, crazy to think. The Cleveland Browns, my entire life, they have been the worst team in football, arguably. Last couple years, they've turned it around. Years of getting a top 5 pick can do that for you if you hit on some of the right picks. And this is kind of the position they've been in. And it's kind of crazy how this went down. Because basically, Deshaun was in between 3 teams that were in the same division. He was between the Panthers, the Falcons, and the Saints. And then reports came out that he basically said he's not interested in the Panthers, which makes perfect sense. The Panthers have a coach that's on the hot seat. And, you don't really know what you're getting into there. New owner and everything as well. And then kind of looking at the other 2 teams, it seemed like the Falcons were the front runner throughout most of this process. He is from Atlanta. And all the rumors said that basically multiple free agents were waiting for him to sign with Atlanta or to go to Atlanta to kind of join him. Some of the names I heard were Leonard Fournette, Will Fuller, I believe Jarvis Landry as well. So those are kind of things that were just waiting to happen. Those free agents were waiting to sign with Deshaun, so he would have gone to Atlanta with some good pieces there as well. But basically, the Cleveland Browns, they were told yesterday that Deshaun's not interested in them. He kind of pulled out on them. And what happened was they went back to the drawing board, reached back out to Deshaun and his reps, and said, you know what? If you come to Cleveland, we will make you the highest paid player. I think it's the most guaranteed money of all time for an NFL player. And they gave him it's a 5-year, $230 million guaranteed extension. The entire contract is guaranteed. To see this for a guy that had 22 women come out and make accusations about him is absolutely mind-blowing. 22 women said regardless of if there's not going to be end up in any kind of criminal suits or anything, but it is a civil court case. But for 22 women and for a team to still go out there and make this player that paid, that's crazy to think. Another very interesting part to this deal is the first year apparently is only a $1 million cap hit. So if for whatever reason the NFL does decide to suspend him, the Browns are just off the hook for the first year. And even if he isn't suspended, the first year they're probably the most set up because of the cap space they'll have with him having such a small contract in year 1. But going past that, it's basically $46 million guaranteed per year throughout the contract. And he just signed an extension a couple years ago with Houston. So I know he still had multiple years left on this deal, and Cleveland decides to kind of pull him back into it, telling him that they're going to give him a crazy contract, which is, to come to Cleveland, it makes sense. Cleveland also on paper is the best team as far as the pieces they have around him. So it makes sense on a football standpoint. And then, if you have to go to a crappy city like Cleveland, getting the most money ever guaranteed for a player makes perfect sense to do so. Although I do somewhat question Cleveland's judgment by giving him this kind of contract to a guy who literally didn't play last year, and some say he still might get suspended for all of this. So that was kind of interesting. But as far as what they gave up, they didn't even give up when you understand you're getting a top 7, top 10 guy back as a QB, to give up 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and a fourth-round pick and then I think there's like a 5th-round pick swap or something like that. And then and then I know Houston is sending a 5th-round pick as well. But they didn't have to give up any of the weapons, any players on their team to make this trade happen. He's going to the Browns like with all the pieces they have. They just got Amari Cooper. You got the two-headed running back attack. Their O-line is pretty good. I know they just cut their center, so it's not like as good as it has been the last couple years, but the last couple years it's been one of the best in the league. They got David Njoku coming back on the franchise tag. And then the defense is just legit too. They've got Myles Garrett, who's one of the best edge rushers in football. So they get all that for just to only give up those picks for Deshaun. They're still going to have their 2nd-round picks. And then in all likelihood, they're going to trade Baker Mayfield. And he's going to get, they're going to get whatever picks for him back. And, realistically, I don't think that they get a 1st-round pick. They might get a couple seconds or a 2nd and a 4th. I do think if you're going to base this off of, I think Sam Darnold was traded for a 2nd and the 4th last year. I think Baker is way better than Sam Darnold, so maybe you could get like a 1st-round pick in 2023 or like a 2nd and a 3rd or something like that. But anyways, like Cleveland's going to be able to recap some of the capital they gave up for Deshaun by trading Baker. Obviously, they won't get all those same picks back. But it's just crazy for me to think like Cleveland, like, there's a couple ways to look at this. If you're looking at it from Cleveland's perspective, and you got an opportunity to get a guy that is that dude and truly is a really good QB, and you think that he's that much better than Baker, then I understand. And you want to make that push to be a Super Bowl team. But now that's what this has to be. If this Browns team doesn't go to the Super Bowl, doesn't win a Super Bowl, it's a huge flop. You're going paying this guy a ton of money who hasn't played football in a season, and you mortgaged your whole future as far as the picks go. We saw what the Rams did that a couple. They've done that multiple times recently. So if you don't end up winning big with this, then you basically sold out the franchise player that you had, the guy that you searched for 20 years to find. So before Baker Mayfield came to the Cleveland Browns, they hadn't been to the playoffs since 2002. And so he came in 2018 and they went in 2020. That's crazy. Like, Baker Mayfield was a key contributor to turning that team around. Like, people forget that. Like, the team was winless before he joined them, and he took them to the playoffs and won a game. I'm going to just list off the QBs that were in Cleveland the 10 years prior to Baker Mayfield, because it's pretty astonishing. The year before this is 2017. You had Deshaun Kaiser, Kevin Hogan, and then I'm just going to reel off the rest of the list. You got Cody Kessler, RG3, Josh McCown, Johnny Football, Brian Hoyer, Jason Campbell, Brandon Whedon, Colt McCoy, Seneca Wallace, Jake Delhomme, Brady Quinn, Derek Anderson, and Ken Dorsey. So you had 10 years, a decade of nobody at QB, basically. Like, the biggest name is RG3, but he was coming off of multiple injuries, and he wasn't healthy at this point in his career. Multiple of these guys were first-round picks. Colt McCoy, Johnny Manziel. I think, Brandon Whedon was for sure a first-round pick. So a bunch of top picks. Deshaun Kaiser was a second-round pick, I believe. So, the team just invested heavily at trying to find the guy, and they found the guy. His name is Baker Mayfield. He took them to the playoffs and won a football game in the playoffs against the division rival. And then they just got rid of him. They didn't want to extend him. I want to say, they said something along the lines of, we want an adult quarterback on our team. And it's just funny because it's you go from Baker Mayfield, for the most part, carries himself professionally. He's a great dude on and off the field. And you go and you trade for a guy who definitely has question marks. We'll see how the rest of the civil thing plays out. But, you got to question a man's integrity when he's got 22 different women coming up. These aren't just 22 women that he had consensual hookups with. These are 22 women that were like massage therapists that had issues with Deshaun Watson. So Cleveland saw all that. They're cool with all that. Gave him a crazy contract. And now they're going to just toss Baker Mayfield, the dude who's done the most for the franchise in the last 20 years. They're just going to toss him out like nothing. And, I want to see Baker Mayfield succeed. I want to see him go to a team like the Colts. I think if Baker Mayfield ends up with the Colts and with Frank Reich, I think he could really, prove Cleveland wrong. With the right system, with the right pieces around him, I think Baker Mayfield's a guy who can win you football games, can take you deep into the playoffs. Obviously I would say the same about Deshaun, but if you're Cleveland, you just gave up all the capital. You could have extended Baker for way less than $46 million a year. Maybe you save another, I don't know, $20 million on that per year if you had Baker, and you could pay a wide receiver $20 million a year or whatever. I think that can definitely play into things here in the future. Maybe not year one. Maybe year one, Deshaun plays and they go deep into the playoffs. But they for sure will feel like they're going to for sure feel the contract eventually. But yeah, I root for Baker. The guy has constantly throughout his entire football career, he has been doubted and he has exceeded expectations. This is a guy who's a multiple-time walk-on who became a Heisman winner, ended up being the first overall pick in the NFL draft. And the thing, too, is a lot of people said, Baker's the first pick in the draft. Those expectations are completely gone. Now he has high expectations. He's not out here with a chip on his shoulder proving people wrong. And maybe they were right, but now things are certainly different because Baker Mayfield was the QB for the Cleveland Browns. They went through all that. He realized that Browns didn't want to extend him after 4 years. They didn't care about what he did for the franchise, and they were willing to move on quickly. This is like a day after Cleveland denied that they would even entertain the possibility of trading Baker, and they've already traded for Deshaun. Kind of rooting for Baker, and then we'll see how things pan out with Deshaun. It's certainly a lot to give up, but if Deshaun goes and has another 10, 15-year career and he returns to the dude that he was prior, then, maybe they do get where they want to go as a team. And then the day prior to this, we also had another massive trade. This is the Davante Adams trade to the Las Vegas Raiders. He was traded for the first and second round pick of the Raiders for this year, the 2022 NFL Draft. And he was also given a 5-year extension worth $141.25 million, which comes down to $29.25 million per year. So he is by far the highest paid receiver in football. And he gets to reunite with his college teammate, Derek Carr. They both went to Fresno State, so they have the connection. They've been friends for a long time. And the funny thing, too, is Derek Carr, coming out, Derek Carr had some of those, this guy's, has some of that Aaron Rodgers to him. Obviously, he's not Aaron Rodgers, but, he's a similar style QB. And now they get to reunite. For Aaron Rodgers, it's tough because now the Packers basically don't have anybody. You got Randall Cobb. But, outside of that, they don't have a legit number one. Even before trading Davante Adams, it was they need to get a second dude in there with Davante. And now they don't even have the dude in there. They don't have Davante. So that's a huge crushing blow for the Packers. The one thing I do want to touch on is that, the media just hates Aaron Rodgers. They hated him over the shot thing. They hate him. It's been constantly dumped on Aaron Rodgers. They made up the narrative that he was getting $50 million a year for 4 years. Turns out he signed, I think it was 3-year, $150 million extension. So he is getting $50 million a year. But if you look at the cap hits, it's actually kind of benefiting the Packers, especially this first couple years of the deal. So it's the media dumps on him constantly, and now, I'm seeing people in the media say that Davante Adams is not on the Packers because Aaron Rodgers signed the extension, which couldn't be further from the truth, because come to find out, the Packers actually offered a bigger contract to Davante Adams, and he just wanted to play elsewhere. He wanted to go reunite with his former QB from college, and so the whole Aaron Rodgers is the reason that he didn't get extended because Aaron Rodgers wanted money. He's so greedy. That's not the case at all. And as a matter of fact, Aaron Rodgers' contract helped create cap space for this season coming up. So it's just funny. But Davante Adams completely goes and changes that Raiders offense. You've got one of the best receiving tight ends in football in Darren Waller, and they have good other receiving weapons around them. Bryan Edwards is another good young receiver. He's not like the number one guy, but then you got Hunter Renfrow too, great slot receiver, and then you pair those dudes that need a number one with Davante Adams. That's huge for that offense. They've already got a solid run game. I know they've got some moving pieces on the O-line. They could work on that and some pieces on the defense, but this AFC West is going to be super fun to watch this year. It's interesting. So like Russell Wilson was for the longest time in the toughest division in the NFC. Now he's moving to the AFC, and they're probably just going to be just as hard to play in. Like you've got the Chiefs, the Raiders, the Broncos, and the Chargers. All of these teams have made major improvements this offseason. The draft hasn't even happened yet, so they might even get bigger improvements eventually. And yeah, I mean, this next season's going to be wild. This offseason so far, we're months away from more football, and this offseason has been incredible. Every day there seems to be some kind of big trade. And like, if you think about it, prior to Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson getting traded in this same exact offseason, there's never been a player of their caliber traded in the NFL. Obviously we have some select instances where a player leaves like when they're old. Like, Peyton Manning went to the Broncos. I think he was a free agent. Or you had Brett Favre to the Vikings. Like, but these are guys like at the end of their career. These aren't guys who are literally in their prime or about to be in their prime. That's things are shaking up big time in the NFL. Both of those moves could have big impact on the future of the game of football. We'll see kind of how next year plays out. I think the AFC is going to be insane to watch. NFC is going to be like totally up in the air. Like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, like we very well might see one of them in it. The Rams could be back in the mix of things as well. And then another big move that went down was Von Miller signing, I think it was a 6-year, $120 million contract with the Buffalo Bills. This one came out of left field. I don't think anybody was expecting Von Miller to go to the Bills. Most people thought, he either stays with the Rams, he goes back to his team, the Broncos, that he spent most of his career with. And then there was also some rumblings that he was talking to Dallas. And then out of nowhere, Buffalo gives him this massive contract, which I think he's 33 already. So I wouldn't expect him to play the 6 years. I know with some of these contracts, like they're totally loaded with years and money. And usually what happens is like they front load them. So the player gets all their guarantees in the first couple years. And then, if they're not like playing, if Von Miller's not 38 years old and not playing in the NFL anymore, then he'll probably be released or whatever. But that's a big move, and most of these are all AFC teams, so it's just crazy. The AFC is getting completely better. But another crazy thing going on, fun thing in sports. The tournament just started, March Madness, NCAA basketball, and pretty much everybody's bracket's already jacked up. I made a bracket this year, and we're through the first round, and my bracket's busted on multiple points of it were messed up. Major thing is Kentucky lost to St. Peter's. Kentucky was the 2 seed. St. Peter's is the 15 seed. This became the 10th time all time that a 15 seed beat a 2 seed. And prior to this game, I think there was 9 wins out of 135 games. So I think that's a 6 or 7% win percentage. That's crazy. I saw a picture of St. Peter's gym, St. Peter's is like, they play in like a high school basketball gym. And then Kentucky's obviously Kentucky. They have a massive arena. Um, that's what the tournament's all about. Upsets, Cinderella stories. You get to see these great moments. Some of the guys that are playing, we get to see like maybe guys that are going to be the future of the NBA. They kind of make their imprint on the tournament. Like we saw years back, Carmelo Anthony took Syracuse to the championship. We saw Davidson with Steph Curry go on a deep run. Like these things are so fun to watch in March Madness. And kicking things off, Kentucky already lost. But apart from Kentucky, I want to touch on a couple other fun games that I was able to tune into. New Mexico State was able to beat UConn. That was a 12 seed upsetting a 5 seed. Arkansas. A couple really close ones. Arkansas was a 4 seed. They barely beat Vermont 75-71. UCLA was also a 4 seed that barely beat Akron 57-53. Honestly, I think UCLA is probably going to get bounced. I don't think that they're going to go as far as some might think. I've seen a few of their games this year where I want to say I saw them against Florida State, and then a couple games ago the Arizona game. So I don't see UCLA going deep into the tournament, especially starting off the way they're starting. And then another big one was Michigan beat Colorado State. Number 11 Michigan, number 6 Colorado State in the seeding. I don't think this one was as big of, obviously the seeding and the favorites, but like Michigan, I mean, it's Michigan basketball. You would think Michigan basketball any given year has a pretty good chance to beat Colorado State. But that's just touching on that game. And then one game I was watching last night. This is Murray State versus San Francisco. This was crazy fun to watch. There was a dude. I haven't heard him before, so I might be butchering his name, but it's Boyed. He hit a step back 3 to go into overtime, and San Francisco is like on this crazy fun comeback. They got into overtime, and Murray State was able to kind of pull away. But that was a ton of fun to watch. I think these things are just going to start kicking into gear like these next couple days with the tournament. As we get deeper into the tournament, things get more and more exciting. Things come down to the end. And there's just so much to the tournament that's so fun to watch. Like, the fact is that most of these guys that are playing in these games, it's their last opportunity to play in college. You got a lot of them that are either going to go pro after this year, and many others that are like in their last year of college, so they probably won't be back in this position. So to see like how, every team, all their players are going all out for it. And with college basketball, since you only get one game, it's so much more like up in the air than a 7-game series would be in the NBA. So like I've got no idea who's going to end up winning this thing, but it's going to be a ton of fun to watch and see how things progress. But then I'm going to stay on some college stuff, and then we're going to move to some UFC here in a few minutes. But I gotta make a couple points. This is From the Couch Sports. I'm a fan. I think I make this show for the fans. It's by a fan. I don't claim to be some pro athlete or anything like that. I don't want to make this a political show by any means. But there is certain things that are like, and honestly, I don't even think these should be political topics. I just think that they're things that discuss that the rest of the mainstream media won't discuss. I grew up watching ESPN all the time. My dad used to get home from work. First thing he would do, ESPN.go.com, type it in, and we'd look at the news for the day, look at the scores. ESPN was like the source of sports when I was younger, but ESPN is just awful now. ESPN is just this woke nonsense, and it's disgusting to watch. Like, it's very clear which side of the fence that ESPN leans on as far as their politics go, and that's not what I watch ESPN for. I don't watch, any of these. Like, I think Fox is more of like a middle ground. Obviously, like Fox News is more right leaning, but like Fox Sports, for instance, they're usually in the middle of things. They're not pushing this garbage agenda, this woke sports shit down people's throats. But like to kick the NCAA women's tournament off today, the ESPN announcement crew decided to take a moment of silence to protest the "Don't Say Gay" bill in Florida. Um, this is just mind blowing. These people don't know what the hell they're talking about. This bill, first of all, is not even called that. It's not called the "Don't Say Gay" bill. The bill is literally designed so that teachers don't have the ability to discuss sex and gender with with kindergarteners through third graders. They don't discuss sex. Like they're 5 years old. I've got a 5-year-old at home as well. I don't want my son learning about sex. That shit is ridiculous. And for ESPN to think like, let's have a moment of silence. The funny thing too is like the moment of silence came during a women's game that was like this. It was halftime and the score was 40-4. It was a 36-point blowout. A team only had 4 points at halftime. And here you got these woke sports announcers over here. Let's take a moment of silence to support our LGBT, whatever the acronym is. Like it's mind blowing. And to make things worse, the day prior to this, and this is the second time I'm going to cover this. I don't want to cover it too much, but I'm definitely here. I'm a fan, but I'm going to stand up for athletes, because I'm passionate about the sports. I hope, I hope others would do this as well. But the day prior to this, a man went and won a championship in swimming against women. And ESPN not only covered this, they cover it in a positive light. Transgender swimmer wins title. Let's go interview him. And so you got ESPN, this garbage company that's full of woke crap. And it's like, dude, I don't turn on ESPN to listen to your politics, dude. I turn on ESPN to watch sports. Like I've said before, sports is a place where anyone can come together, all different races, different sex, different orientations, religions, and they come together and create unity. That's what sports has been about forever. But you got ESPN, a company that's not about that at all anymore, and it's just disgusting. The fact of the matter is, this William or Leah Thomas, this guy's a nut job. This is a guy who literally for 3 years was on the Penn men's swimming team. So it's not like a guy who, decided that he was a girl in high school or what have you. This is a dude who was competing in the NCAA in men's. And he was a horribly ranked man. So he decided to switch genders and go over and become a woman and absolutely dominate everybody. Shatter records that women have dedicated their whole lives for. And this is just something the NCAA is okay with, that people are praising. So this guy was the 462nd best man. And he's the first ranked female, but he's not a female. He's a man. So, people are supportive of, women's rights. There's times in history where women weren't playing sports. Now we allow men to dominate women's sports. It brings back to the Joanna man, like the South Park episode where you got the wrestler on there, and it's like, this is humor, this is comedy, but this is reality for some people, and some people support this nonsense, and it's disgusting. So the fact that the NCAA allows this is disturbing. This is outright cheating. You're allowing someone who has a huge physical advantage to dominate a sport and win. And I'm just going to bring up a couple examples just to compare and talk about how absolutely ridiculous this crap is. Reggie Bush, he had his Heisman taken away from him for receiving benefits. I think Reggie Bush received like $300,000 or something, somewhere along those lines. And they literally took his Heisman. They took his name out the record books. And Reggie Bush is like the best college running back of my lifetime. And They erased that because Reggie Bush received money. And now in the year 2022, you can be a college running back and you can get paid money. The NIT rule, I think it's the NIL rules have changed, and players are getting contracts left and right. And Reggie Bush was dubbed a cheater for that. But yet the NCAA has done nothing about a man competing in a women's sport. That's absolutely despicable. Another ridiculous incident. Ohio State's football team, I think this is in 2010, 2012, somewhere in that range. This was when Terrell Pryor was on the roster. They traded basically merchandise and autographs and what have you for tattoos. And for doing that, they got suspended. That is not cheating. Being a man and competing in a women's sport is cheating. But yet the NCAA, they decide that those are more harsh things. That's crazy. How in the world do we live in a time that this shit is okay? This is not okay. And, anybody who's raising any kids, don't tell your kids that this crap is okay. If you're raising a daughter, you should be furious, because there will be a point, if we accept this crap, where your daughter will be competing in sports against a man, and she will probably be dominated, because that's overall, maybe if you're not athletic and you meet an athletic woman, then maybe that woman can beat you in sports. But if you're an athletic man and you're put into competition against women, you will dominate. That is how it's been throughout history. I want to say there's a U14 soccer team of boys beat the Olympic women's team, which is the best team in the world, that won gold medals. It's clear that there's a distinct difference between male and female when it comes to performing in physical activities. So to allow this crap to happen, there was a woman that literally didn't get to perform because they allowed this man to perform. A girl who worked her whole life, maybe this was her last event in the NCAA, and she didn't get to swim because they allowed a man to swim. That, I don't know how anybody can think that's okay. And I don't understand how anybody with a right mind can go in to their sports job with any kind of sports media and not be outraged about this. This is crazy. This would be like, why don't we just allow steroids? Why don't we allow steroids in all sports, in men's sports? Why is it not okay to have an unfair advantage? You're allowing cheating to happen, and it's disgusting. None of these things should be allowed in sports. Obviously steroids shouldn't be allowed, but what's the difference between allowing a man playing a women's sport versus a man in a men's sport taking steroids? He's getting a physical advantage as well. There's not much of a difference to me. Both situations are cheating, and there's no argument to it. And honestly, if anybody does decide they want to defend this position, they're a straight lunatic, and they got serious issues, because a man does not belong in sports with women. What you do behind closed doors, do you. I'm not here to critique that. I don't give a crap what you do in your bedroom. But do not put this crap in front of the whole world in sports. This ruins sports. They literally, could you imagine an NBA player going and playing in the WNBA? Let's just take a guy off the G League who feels like, I've been on the bench in the G League for 2 years. I decide I want to be a woman now. Can you imagine how crazy that would happen in the WNBA? We will ruin sports. Women's sports will cease to exist if we let this crap happen. I can't understand how anybody, male or female, would approve of this. And these people that are, these people have clearly mental issues, and they make a small fraction of society. They are such a small percentage. For us to live our life and to change normal things in society based on these people that are deranged, it's absolute nonsense, and it needs to stop. Like I said, I don't want to make this a political thing. I'm ashamed that fellow people in the sports media world are not covering this. It seems like the only people covering it are the political pundits, and that's disturbing. Like, this is a man competing against women. How many more times do I got to say that? Like, I'm here to stand up for sports. I care about sports, and I think someone's got to stand up. I was reading, like, because I was curious. Why aren't some of these girls standing up? Why aren't their parents standing up? And a lot of things going out are saying, like, these girls are at risk of losing their scholarship over a man competing in their sport. If they decide to have a problem or boycott or anything like that, they won't have their scholarship anymore, because they're not okay just letting this dude go. Like, there's other rumor that this dude just willingly changes in the same locker room as them, doesn't care, he doesn't show them any kind of respect. Pull up a picture of this dude, William Thomas, Leah Thomas. He's a man. He doesn't look anything like a girl. You grow your hair out long doesn't make you a female. Grow your hair out, shave your legs, you're still a man, dude. You were born a man. No matter what you do to change that, you're still biologically a man, and especially when competing. And the funny thing too is, this is another thing that's not talked about. So a lot of the women on the Penn swim team came together and wrote a letter, like, in opposition to this dude playing. And the school, like, all the way woke. We let these disgusting human beings. We let men compete in women's sports. So we're cool. We're cool with it. This stuff has to stop. This is disgusting. Sports should be a place to come together. Sports should be a place of unity. And women's sports, as it is, they don't get a ton of attention, because half of the population doesn't necessarily watch women's sports. And then even beyond that, like, most women aren't sports viewers. So it's like women already have a tough time getting people to view their sports. But these women, they train their whole life for these moments, and they deserve a platform as well. They deserve to perform in sports as well. And we are here ruining things because the woke PC culture of today wants to allow this nonsense, this disgusting thing happen. That's kind of all I want to say on it today. It's disgusting. These people are trying to change, humans' values. They want to change the definition of science. They want to change your religion. It's disgusting. Anyone, no matter what side of the political thing you are on, left or right, this should disgust you. This isn't about transgender rights or whatever nonsense. This is about men competing in women's sports, and it's ruining women's sports. That's all I have to say on it there. But moving forward, I want to end on, like, something more lighthearted. Something more positive, something I'm excited about this weekend. We've got UFC returning to London. They have not been to London since 2019. That was on the fight card that Jorge Masvidal. This was like the first moment that Masvidal made a big statement when he went into London and knocked out Darren Till. And then after he knocked out Darren Till, that's when the 3-piece and a soda interview happened. He was getting interviewed, and then Leon Edwards was in the corner, like, talking to him, and he walked up and he punched him. That's where the 3-piece and a soda quote came from. But they haven't been back, and this will be the first time back since the pandemic. And there is a ton of fights that are going to be fun to watch. They have basically loaded this card up with, a bunch of people from the UK, but also, like, this. This card arguably could be better than some of the pay-per-views we've seen lately. Like, from the prelims all the way up, even. So I want to touch on the fights I'm most excited for. But there's a lot of them. So first of all, Muhammad Makayev versus Cody Durden. Makayev is undefeated. He's 6-0 in MMA, and he's only 21. But he's got a crazy background in wrestling and jiu-jitsu. He's at 125, and a lot of people think that there's a good chance that he's just going to take things over. I've even seen people say he could be champion and what have you. And this is also a guy, he's got over 20 wins, undefeated in amateur MMA, which you don't see too many times. A lot of times, like, amateur MMA fights, like you'll see on someone's record 4 or 5 fights, and then they jump to the pros. This dude is just, he had a ton of fights before going pro. And then, Cody Durden is also like, he's a good fighter too. And I think he's been getting a lot of hate for, a comment that I think was taken out of context. Last year he beat a Chinese fighter, and he said something on the lines of, I had to send him back to where he came from. And, like, I mean, we live in a time where, like, a lot of MMA media is also on this woke nonsense that I was talking about with ESPN. So a lot of people are calling Cody Durden a racist for saying I had to send him back to where he came from. It's just not a racist thing at all. Like, we hear it all the time in sports. Like, I didn't see it as racist. I think what happened is a lot of people took it out of context and thought, like, he was saying something racist towards a Chinese fighter and what have you. So he's another guy, like, a lot of people going into this fight are rooting against him for that reason, because they think he's a racist, when he just maybe misworded, how he was saying something. But nonetheless, I think that's going to be a fun fight to watch. And then also on the prelims, it's funny because, like, this main card is so stacked that some of these fights could be on the main card, but they're on the prelims. And one of those is Jack Shore, who's 15-0, versus Timur Valiev, who's 18-2. I believe this is 135. And this is like a sleeper fight. A lot of people say this could be like the fight of the night. But it's a stacked fight. It's a crazy, crazy fight card. And then also, also on the prelims, Nikita Krylov versus Paul Craig. This is crazy. So Paul Craig came out, like, I think it was earlier this year. He kind of made it seem like he was going to retire maybe towards the end of this year. And he's kind of made some more statements this week saying, like, he wants to pursue a belt. And Krylov is also a big, a good fighter for him to face. So I'm very curious to see how that goes. And then I think this is the main card. Jumping into Jai Herbert versus Ilya Topuria. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing this. Topuria is moving up to 155. His last fight, he faced Ryan Hall. And that was like, he ended up just smashing Ryan Hall on the ground because Ryan Hall kept going for the same move over and over again. But Ilya is like a legit contender. He's 11-0. I'm curious to see, is like this a full move up to 155, or is he going to go back and forth? But, if this is a full move up to 155, they've already started setting up a next matchup for him. There was like a little backstage brawl with Paddy Pimblett. It was Ilya and some of his guys, and then Paddy was like on the opposite side of a table. They ended up like kind of throwing pushes at each other. Like, I don't think any big punches or anything were landed. Paddy Pimblett said he bounced a hand sanitizer bottle off of Ilya's face, and they've just gone back and forth in the media just talking crap to each other. But they're both, Paddy's at 155, and now Ilya is fighting at 155, so that could set up a fight between them two, which I think the UFC would like. They love that kind of controversial thing. And then Molly McCann versus Luana Carolina. That should be a fun fight. Gunnar Nelson is fighting for the first time since 2019 when he lost to Gilbert Burns. And he's fighting Takashi Soto, who's also fighting for the first time since November of 2020. So that should be fun. Gunnar Nelson's like in his area too, so I think the fans are going to be crazy hearing these guys come out. And then Paddy Pimblett is fighting Rodrigo Vargas. Rodrigo's a lot older. I think he's 36 and Paddy's 27. And he's on a one-fight win streak. But Paddy's got the hype. He's got the haircut. He's got the personality. He's got a bunch of big sponsorships. I think he signed a $1 million deal with Barstool and whatnot. Like, a lot of people say if Paddy continues to win, he could be like one of the next superstars in the UFC. The thing is, though, is like we'll see, like, when he faces a big step up in competition. I think, like, realistically, he should probably win this weekend. If he doesn't, that's going to be a lot of people are going to be knocking on him. But like, you know, Patty gets like comparisons to McGregor and Darren Till and stuff. But like we'll see if he is able to be that kind of fighter. His first fight, he gets a lot of criticism because he got wobbled, and then he won the fight by TKO. But he won. That's all that matters is if you get the wins. But we'll see if the hype train is real with Paddy Pimblett. I think he's super entertaining guy to watch. So I think no matter what happens, people are going to be tuning in to see what he's an exciting guy. And then co-main event. This is a banger fight. 145. You got Arnold Allen, who's 17-1, and Dan Hooker's coming back down to 145. So Arnold Allen, he's only lost one fight in his career, but it came much earlier, as in 2014. And he's in perfect position where if he gets a big win here, maybe he fights one more time and he's in the picture for the belt. And then Dan Hooker's can also be in that boat if he gets a win, because Dan Hooker's had kind of a back and forth at lightweight. He hasn't fought it at 145 in quite some time, but at lightweight he's gone back and forth. He'll get a win and then he'll get a couple losses. He's not a guy who's like washed or anything. It's just that he's a guy who's fighting the best guys in the world. And you win some, you lose some, and he's always fun to watch. He's another one of those guys that's just he's entertaining no matter win or lose. So I think this is going to be a super fun fight to see. I'm curious to see what the outcome is. Honestly, I don't know who's going to win. This is also like one of those fights that you kind of root for both guys. I think both guys are really, really good dudes. So we'll see how that plays out. And then the main event, the fight that this card has been based on, is Alexander Volkov versus Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall is making a big step up fighting Volkov. If he gets this win, he's probably going to be in the top 5. And he's also like one of those guys who's on the come up, could be potentially one of the next big names in the heavyweight division. If you got Cyril Gane, you got Dawkins. Aspinall's kind of in that same vein. And I'm really curious to see like what he looks like against the next step up in opponent. He has 2 losses in his career. One of them was a disqualification from a downward elbow, and then the other one was a heel hook, like very early in his career. I don't think Volkov is going to be going for heel hooks against him. For the most part, Volkov will stand and fight. But Aspinall is he's a super fun fighter. He's super quick. He's one of those like really good athletes at the heavyweight. Like it seems like heavyweight, you get like either a really heavy dude who's got crazy power, but they usually don't have a lot of volume or anything. But then you got some of these guys that are like really good athletes that are also heavyweights, like a Cyril Gane and a Tom Aspinall as well. I would say is in the same level. Maybe not the same level as Gane, but he's in that same category. And it's to be seen. He very well, if he gets a big win here, he's right in that conversation too. Like he might even be in the picture for fighting Gane. So that's a ton of fun to watch. Volkov too, he's always been in the mix of things. If he gets a win too, he's right back into things. So I'm super excited for UFC London to go down tomorrow. It is going to happen a lot earlier because London is obviously on a different time schedule than the United States. But nonetheless, it's a ton of fun fights to watch this weekend. Crazy stuff in the NBA, in the NFL going on with the offseason kicking in. NBA's got the playoffs coming up too. That's going to be fun. And then the NCAA is crazy right now. We've got March Madness kicking off. So stay tuned for more. As always, like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Let me know how you think about the topics we discussed, or if there's any other big topics in sports you'd like me to go over in my next video. But as always, stay tuned for more, and thanks for tuning in.